Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this afternoon's session on fire safety essentials. My name is Raj Samurai, and I'll be taking you on this journey of facilitation of this session. This session will last for approximately 1 to 1.5 hours. As is traditional, I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we are hosting this meeting today, and pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and of course, any other Aboriginal people that are here today. I'd like to start, first of all, by just getting the technology side of things out of the way. Now, the means of communication for you here are by two means. You can actually use the chat function, or you can raise your hand. And thirdly, we'll have a polling function, but more about that shortly. The chat function can be accessed by floating your mouse over the chat icon and then typing in your chat request. The raised hand function works in exactly the same way. If you want to draw attention to yourself so that I can ask you a question, if you've got something to ask, then certainly raise your hand. And thirdly, we have the poll function or polling. Periodically, I will be launching polls that will allow you to answer requests on behalf of the poll itself. So the polls will be at different points throughout the presentation. I'd like to inform you that all of your responses are anonymous. Although I can't see you, you can see me. And that's the only line of visuals that we have. This presentation is actually recorded. And once again, you are not recorded in this. I am merely being recorded myself for training and self-reflection purposes. I must also let you know that some of the imagery that you might see during the course of this presentation might be a bit alarming or somewhat traumatic. If this is the case, please feel free to look away. Also, I'd like to just add that this Fire Safety Essentials, by its very name, is the essentials, the baseline information that we expect our community members to have an understanding of, such that they remain safe in the event of a fire situation. What are the learning outcomes? What is it that we're going to take away from today's presentation? There will clearly be a better understanding of what our local risks are. This particular presentation is all about your local risk. It's about your understanding or expectation of what fire is and how fire behaves. The communication channels, how will you know if there's a fire in your area? How are you going to stay in touch? And of course, like any critical situation, the idea of being able to plan and make informed decisions is also very crucial. Surviving if the plan fails and you get caught out, the best laid plans can fail. And so what's plan B, C, or D? Let's move on to that first part of our learning outcomes for today, which is let's talk about understanding local fire risks. Now, this Fire Safety Essentials program is tailored precisely for the people in the Coleraine and surrounds area. This area has a VFRR rating, which is the Victorian Fire Risk Register reading of 3. The maximum on this scale is 1 for extremely high, whereas Coleraine sits in that high strata. And the interesting thing here is that we specifically targeted Coleraine because of this high VFRR or risk of grass fire. Some background about Coleraine. Coleraine is actually located in the municipality of the Southern Grampians. It was named after the town in County Londonderry in Northern Ireland. The land surrounding the town is farmed primarily for beef and sheep. The town's importance lies in the Peter Francis Point Arboretum, which is a wonderful arrangement of Australian trees, including 500 eucalyptus tree species and the Eucalyptus Discovery Centre. So there you go. The town's population sits at 1,029. One thing that I have found in the relatively short period that I've been doing these both face-to-face and online presentations for the Fire Safety Essentials is the tremendous amount of community spirit and community cohesion that exists within our rural populations. And it's this very essence that underpins the strength of community, the looking after each other, understanding those vulnerable members in the community who might need extra assistance at the time of crisis like fires, like floods. This is pivotal to the work of the CFA, the Country Fire Authority, in that we draw strength from knowing that our communities will behave collectively in the event of a major event. Let's get a bit more involved now and talk more about the Victorian landscape. Now this particular slide shows the range of landscapes that we have throughout Victoria. We have grassland, bushland, mountainous forest area, and of course, farmland. And as this slide clearly demonstrates, Victoria is one of the most bushfire-prone parts of the world. And just absorb yourself in that message for 1 second. We are in one of the world's most bush-prone parts. Yes, we talk of California, but we're no different here. We are highly bushfire-prone. Fire has been present on the Australian continent for millions of years and has been significant in shaping the landscape. Many fires were started by lightning. Aboriginal people used fire for many thousands of years to care for country. The fires were a tool that they used to encourage the growth and extent of grasslands, to enhance hunting, to reduce levels of fuel, and kept vegetation from becoming too dense so that it became impassable. Interestingly, there were very few records of bushfires in the early stages of European settlement, and only really started in 1851. Let's dig a bit deeper. Let's peel back some of these layers. This is a map that demonstrates what we call the southwest region of Victoria, but more particularly, it demonstrates the different weather districts. The take home here is that each fire district will have its own level of fire risk. Another important consideration is what we call the seasonal outlook. Now, the seasonal outlook actually describes the overall weather trend or what is happening in your weather district. This fire season, our current fire season, there is a possible La Nina conditions are expected. These are expected to reduce the risk of prolonged fire activity across most of Victoria compared to last year. So that's good news. Let's just get a bit more into detail now and talk a bit more about exactly what does La Nina mean. La Nina actually means increased rainfall across much of Australia. This will mean cooler daytime temperatures, particularly south of the tropics, and warmer overnight temperatures, particularly in the north. The last La Nina event happened during the winter of 2017-2018, and El Nina, its counterpart, followed in 2018-2019. What does this mean for Coleraine? What does this mean for your neighbourhood? Well, in actual fact, Coleraine is in a part of Victoria that has experienced slightly above average rainfall and above average soil moisture. So the ground is wetter because there's more rain. There is enough moisture to make the grass grow well, but it will dry up quickly as soon as you experience warm weather. On a day like today, we're expecting a 30-degree plus day today. It's the high daytime temperatures like this that will cause the rapid drying, and we call it curing, the rapid curing of our fuel load, the grass particularly. What does this then mean? It means that there is an increased potential for rapid or fast-moving grass fires. Naturally, like every season, there is a need to be prepared, and you'll hear a lot of that prepared word this afternoon. There is a need to be prepared for a fire that could happen due to this high fuel load. My current slide shows a consideration of the local vegetation. Let's talk about that in more detail. I might just open up the chat page now. If there is a comment that you would like to make as regards to what is the fuel load, what is the actual landscape that we are surrounded with here in Coleraine. Yeah, look, I've had some interesting responses there. Thank you for your responses. The predominant fuel around Coleraine is grass, okay, with areas of bush and bush alongside our roadside. So Coleraine clearly is an area at risk. It's at risk from fast-moving grass fires, with a likely ember attack from nearby bush to the north, northwest, and the east also. What does this mean? When we consider the fire and fire behaviour, fires are driven by the wind. A change of wind direction will cause a change of the direction of the fire. This is further impacted by what we call the topography, or the landscape, the falls and the rises in our countryside. Fires always move faster, will travel faster up a hill than down a hill. And in fact, for every 10-degree increase in slope, a fire will double in speed. And I'll repeat, for every 10 degrees increase in inclination of a slope, a fire doubles in speed. Yes, that's right, doubles. And this is because of what we call the radiant heat and also the convective heat. Let's consider local risks for 1 second, and I might just launch a poll here, giving us some indication of understanding our local fire risks. So I'm just about to launch the poll now. Now, if you'd like to jump on there and give me your feedback as to what you think are local risks in the Coleraine area. Is it the windy roads? And I know there are a lot in that neighbourhood. Are there trees or limbs hanging over or access and escape routes? That could be fatal in the event of an ember attack, surely. Are you in an area of high tourist travel? Could that be an impediment? Could that be a local risk? We've already mentioned the concept of grass fires and the speed at which they can travel. There's a risk of ember attack on that high fuel load. And of course, the fuel load itself. Is that a major risk? I'll end the polling there. Share the results. Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you for your feedback there. It's quite clear to say that in this particular poll, all responses are perfectly valid for your locality. There is that risk of small, inaccessible, narrow roads. There are those limbs that could potentially be an exit hazard or even an access hazard. The speed of grass fires, as we've already spoken about, and of course, the risk of ember attack. And we'll be talking a bit more about embers very shortly. I'm going to close that poll, and I suggest you close out of yours as well. Let's move on now and discuss the brigade, the local Coleraine Brigade. And I believe we might have David, your local CFA captain, on board at the moment. David informs you that the local brigade is well resourced, 26 members, numerous active members, and they have at their disposal 2 tankers, 1 pumper and 1 trailer, effectively 4 elements of resource. This resource has to look after on the event of a bad fire day, 578 properties and dwellings, and a population of just over 1,000 individuals. And this was taken at the 2016 census, so it may be slightly higher than that now. The rhetorical question that I'd like to ask here is, well, how confident can you be to expect a CFA tanker on your drive in the event of a bad fire day? And I might just let that hang there for you to review. Doing the maths, it's not rocket science. We can't expect our, however hard-working brigade to be at our beckoning call on the event of a bad fire day, especially when the brigade may well be pulled in many other directions. My main aim here now is for you to gradually layer the information, and so that you can get a better understanding of fire behaviour, an understanding of the awareness of risks that are attached to firefighting, and reinforcing the need to have a plan. Take ownership and have a plan. Make sure all family members, community members, vulnerable members of the community, Auntie Flo next door, Janice down the road, who's living on her own in isolation with 4 dogs, whatever the circumstance may be, community cohesion, community cooperation will help you put together a plan for survival, looking out for each other. What can we expect from fire? What I'm about to show you now is a very graphic depiction of an ember attack. An ember attack is, well, words fail me right now, and I'd rather just play the animation, which I'm going to share with you right now, and the animation will speak for itself. If you feel that this might possibly impact you in any way, please feel free to look away and join us at the end of the animation. Thank you.
During a bushfire, embers will reach your home long before the flames do. Ember attacks are the most common way that houses catch fire. Embers are burning leaves, twigs, and pieces of bark. They help the bushfire spread by starting spot fires ahead of the main fire front. Short-distance ember attacks happen when leaves and small pieces of bark are blown from burning trees. The intense shower of sparks that forms fills the air with hot, burning embers, which will land on nearby vegetation and properties. The hot embers can easily land and get into your clothes and burn your skin, eyes, and airways. Small fires will start all around you and quickly become uncontrollable. The resulting chaos creates confusion as the fire seems to come from many directions, meaning it will be difficult to make good decisions about your safety. The experience will be physically exhausting and emotionally traumatic. Long-distance ember attack is caused by large bushfires that generate intense heat. As the hot air rises, it forms a column of smoke that sucks in air like a vacuum, increasing the intensity of the fire. The updraft in the column lifts embers, like large pieces of burning ribbon bark, hundreds of metres into the air, where strong winds can carry them many kilometres beyond the fire front. On Black Saturday, embers travelled more than 30 kilometres ahead of the main fire. When these embers land, they often start fires where leaves naturally accumulate, like in gutters, doorways, and garden beds. So, while you might think you're safe when a bushfire is far away, embers can fall from the sky and land around your home long before you even know there's a fire. But remember, your home isn't the only thing under threat during an ember attack. By the time you realise the danger, it might be too late as escape routes become jammed. Embers can also start fires on roads and block them completely, making late evacuation dangerous or impossible. That's why leaving early, before a fire starts, is always your safest option.
I make no apologies for the graphic nature of this particular presentation. It is designed to shock, and it's designed to bring home that message that you don't want to be in the way of an ember attack. It's the precursor to the fire. Embers can travel a long distance, as the animation clearly showed. Ember attack is the biggest cause of property loss during the fire. And the very nature of a graphic depiction like that, I've worked in the health industry for a long time, and people only really get it, really get it, when the images are powerful and close to home. And I think that's the very nature of promoting Mother Nature's most uncontrollable force. We talk about natural disasters, we talk about tornadoes and floods. Fire is right there up amongst them. It is uncontrollable, it is unpredictable, and yet some of us choose to be in harm's way. As a passionate person when it comes to risk management and particularly risk mitigation, I think it's imperative that we all understand that we do not have the capacity to fight fire, and the CFA strongly advocate for leaving early, leaving your home and being out of harm's way. What I'm going to do now is show you another animation that relates to radiant heat, and I might just stop sharing my screen for a second while I just find the actual presentation that I'd like to show to you. If you just bear with me 1 second, I'll just cue this up right here. Place that down. So again, if you feel in any way that this might impact you, then please look away and join us at the end of the presentation. This is radiant heat.
Victoria is one of the most bushfire-prone parts of the world. Every summer, bushfires threaten properties and lives. But did you know it's not the flames that kill most bushfire victims? No, it's the radiant heat. Most victims die from the effects of radiant heat long before they're reached by the flames. Radiant heat is what you feel when you sit next to a campfire. If a campfire heats up to 2 kilowatts per square metre, you'll feel that it's too hot and will want to move back from the fire. If you don't, this amount of radiant heat is enough to cause burns and blisters in as little as 40 seconds. At 12 kilowatts, it can cause some materials like dry timber to ignite. A bushfire can reach 100 kilowatts, and the effects can be truly catastrophic. For humans, radiant heat can cause burns from 100 meters away and cause a dangerous increase in body temperature. Radiant heat can cause the rapid onset of heat stroke. Heat stroke damages your brain, meaning you won't be able to concentrate to make good decisions as the fire arrives. Other impacts include severe damage of internal organs and death. There are some things you can do if you're caught in a fire. Cover your skin with long-sleeved natural fibre clothing like wool. It's also useful to know that radiant heat only travels in straight lines and can't bend around corners. So, sheltering behind or inside solid structures may help protect you. But be aware, radiant heat will travel straight through glass. The best defence against radiant heat is a simple one. If you're not anywhere near a bushfire, its radiant heat can't hurt you. Leaving early is always your safest option.
And once again, in this situation, the message is powerful and the message is clear. Be out of harm's way. Before I move on to the next section of the presentation, I'd just like to make comment that yes, we've got radiant heat and yes, we've got Ember Attack. But we've also got what we call direct flame impact. This is dry fuel on your property, any log piles, bunches of leaves, where there is that continuity of fuel between you and the fire front will be a clear avenue for the fire. And there's that old adage that if you've got fuel to your doorstep, you will have fire to your doorstep. How do we mitigate this? We put natural breaks in. Yes, we put breaks in that will allow the fire to have that discontinuity of progress. It won't move any further. It will stop. And that could be right in the form of a gravel path, a driveway, anything that's non-combustible. We often say that vegetation looks to burn, yeah? And this was used in days gone by when we spoke about the germination of seeds. And a lot of our sort of indigenous forebears did this with view to regeneration of our land. One thing that the CFA does do, particularly after sort of major fire instances, is they interview and talk to people that survived fire, and they ask for their opinions. And I share this slide with you just to give you some indication of the emotional value that's attached to what people went through. In fact, what I might also do is share another animation with you that gives you some idea of the of that emotional integrity when it comes to actually being in a fire type situation. So if you just bear with me 1 second. This particular presentation or animation is entitled, "I'll Never Do That Again." Thank you.
10 years ago, when all the dams were full and the tanks were full and there was plenty of water, I probably would have stayed and I would have died.
Nothing went the way we might have anticipated.
Whatever preparations you put into place, you only need something small to go wrong.
You know, in future, I don't think we'd want to put the kids through that sort of trauma, I guess. Yeah, wouldn't put the kids through that again.
If it was my choice, I wouldn't stay again. If we had another day like that, if I had the opportunity to get out, I would go before the fire even got here.
Do you know, I hope that as we progress through this presentation, you're getting a real sense of the futility of staying and defending. And if testimonials like that aren't enough, I don't really know what is. We don't want you to be there. We want you to stay alive, and we want you to protect your family and be out of harm's way. These are some of the core messages that we've already spoken about, and I just want to reiterate them, and I'll keep doing this time and time again. We've already discovered that being in a fire situation is a very traumatic event. I think some of our animations, the Ember Attack and the Radiant Heat animation, clearly show that. It's a stressful and traumatic time, primarily because you're in a world that is dark, that is noisy, and highly disorientating. You need to have a plan and you need to be prepared. We've spoken about the fact that in such events, our stress level is compounded. We don't know what our exit routes are. We don't know where we're going to be going. We've got that constant threat of embers falling around us and spot fires happening. And of course, we've got the invisible danger of radiant heat, which arrives way before the flames arrive. clearly in this situation, your ability to make informed decisions is going to be impacted by many factors. And I'd just like to raise a poll at this stage to ascertain exactly what is it that you think. Stop sharing those, and let's have the poll. As to what do you expect from a fire? What is it that you would do? In terms of your ability to respond, I'm going to launch this poll, and if you could give me some responses to, and it's a multiple choice one as well, what do you think would impact your ability to make good, well-informed decisions? And remember, as human beings, we generally don't handle stress well. There are some people that can, but the majority cannot. And it's that majority that often become the fatalities because they have not got the preparation in place to fight fire. They don't have that plan. They have made no pre-preparation. Okay, I'll just end that polling and share the results with you. Yep. From the responses you've given, it's quite clear to see that stress is by far one of the most important factors that will impact on your ability to make good decisions. Cognitively, we are impaired when we're under stress. We can't adapt to a rapidly changing environment fast enough, particularly if it's alien to us and we've made no consideration in preparation. We panic when things are not going to plan. And of course, when we throw time into the mix as well, the added pressure of not having enough time is another limiting factor. Poor communication, a breakdown in communication when family members don't know what they're doing, where they're going, where are the children, what's happening with the animals. All these questions have to be asked. I'm going to stop sharing results now and exit out of that poll. As we move through to the next slide, let's talk a bit more now about another one of our learning outcomes today, which is, well, how do you know if there is a fire? In fact, in the chat page, can you just jump into the chat and let me know how do you know if there is a fire in your area? And I might just give you a couple of seconds while you respond to that. Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you. Well, look, we've got a couple of comments coming in, and one of them is the Vic Emergency app. That's 100%. That's your top answer. But we've also got, and I'll talk more about the Vic Emergency app very shortly, but I just want to spend a bit of time on talking about the fire danger rating. One person did mention the sign that's on the roadside, but she didn't actually call it the fire danger rating. It is the fire danger rating, or FDR, and this is a scale of fire indication. But before I let the answer out of the bag, I just want to raise another poll here, which looks at your understanding of exactly what is it that you understand the FDR to mean. I'm going to launch the poll now. So the first question asks us, what does the fire danger rating, or FDR, actually mean? What do you understand? Is it one of two responses? Is it the fire danger rating is an indicator of how likely a fire will start? Or is it an indicator of how bad a fire would be if one were to start? So that's your two responses there. And this is quite pivotal to our understanding of the FDR. There are two more questions that I've attached there, and they're primarily for you to let me know just how many code red days have we had in the Southwest region in the last 5 years. And also how many severe or extreme days we have happened in the Southwest region in the last 5 years. Might just give you a couple more seconds. And of course, the main take-home message with the fire danger rating is that it doesn't necessarily have to be a day that is, I guess, let me just end the polling there. Share results. Yeah, perfect. Perfect. Stop sharing yours. The main take-home message, sorry to interrupt you there. The main take-home message here is that it doesn't have to be a severe or a very high, a severe or an extreme day, or conversely a code red day, for it to be a bad fire day. Bad fire days can happen at the high and very high. So you've got to understand, well, what do these triggers mean to me? This sign is often seen on television. You find it on social media as well, and also on the side of the road, generally by CFA sheds. I'm going to answer some of those questions for you first of all. Now, the meaning of FDR, what it stands for, this is actually an indicator of just how bad a fire would be if it were to start. How hard would it be to put that fire out? That's what the low, medium, low, moderate, high, very high, severe, extreme, and code red. On a severe day, if a fire was to go, it would be particularly difficult to put that fire out. We might just take this to the next level. And by the next level, I mean this. I'm going to just do a bit of, I suppose, a summary of exactly what the severe means, extreme and code red. On a severe day, okay, a severe day is typified by hot, dry, and windy. If a fire starts on a severe day, and if it takes hold, it may be uncontrollable, maybe. So you've got a chance in that situation, I would imagine. If we consider an extreme day, we can expect extremely hot, dry, and very windy conditions. Remember what I said about the wind? That's the driving force for our fires. It will determine the direction of the fire. If a fire does start on an extreme day and take hold, it will be uncontrollable. There is no doubt that on an extreme day, a fire will be uncontrollable, unpredictable, and fast-moving. Remember how we spoke about spot fires occurring as a result of Ember Attack? Well, spot fires will start on an extreme day. They'll move quickly and will come from many different directions. You almost feel like you're bombarded by embers and spot fires dropping in multiple directions. And last but not least, we have code red days. These are the worst possible conditions, and our Australian homes are not designed to withstand a code red day. They're not. Under these circumstances, the safest place to be is to be away from that area of high bushfire-prone activity. The underlying message here is to link these fire warnings from the FDR as your triggers as to when you are going to leave your home. What's the fire plan? What do the conditions have to be saying to you before you decide to leave? We would advocate to leave as early as possible. And I'll go into that in detail in 2 seconds. This slide is very interesting. You know, we speak a lot about infobesity. You know, as members of the community, we are constantly bombarded by not only the traditional sources of information by way of newspaper, radio, and television, and maybe even the spoken word, the casual conversation with someone in a cafe, the casual conversation with a neighbor when you're walking the dog or over the fence when you're watering the garden. Those are what we call very much informal means of communication. And of course, we're also bombarded with the digital impact, the social media elements. And, you know, you've got reference to Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and the list goes on, Instagram accounts. This is all another platform that we can get information from. The principal difference here is that these are all informal and not totally credible. Here at the CFA, we would like to think that you, in the event of critical management or emergency management or fire awareness, that you have access to a number of alternative information sources. And we mentioned the Vic Emergency app as shown on the bottom left-hand corner. This, in my opinion, is by far the most important and most accessible app that you can have on your mobile phone to give you real-time coverage of fire activity in your locality. It allows you to set a radius of coverage, and that radius can be moved if you're traveling from one place to another, and it gives you a clear indicator of fire activity. Certainly, there are other means of communication, and the local news, the Vic Emergency Hotline, are just one of several others. While we're on this topic of local news, I often talk about the emergency bag, and it's probably pertinent to make that comment here. The importance of having an emergency bag can't be stressed heavily enough. In the event of a bad fire day, and prior to that bad fire day, have your emergency bag prepared. One thing I should mention is that all of the information, that you don't need to take notes during this presentation. There will be a resources link given at the end of this presentation, which will allow you to access many of the contact details that I'm speaking about now. And the, I guess, leaving early template that includes an example of a typical emergency bag will be available on that resource kit. The emergency bag should ultimately contain many things, and I'll go into that later, but one of the key things is a battery-operated radio. The importance of a battery-operated radio is this. In the event of a bad fire day, communications will more than likely go down. And when you're in that dark space of a fire, that disorientation, the poor visibility, the noise, a battery-operated radio could be your only link with the outside world, your way out of that situation, particularly if you tune into local radio ABC for local news. Roads that are open, what's going on outside, who's doing what. These are fundamental and absolutely critical to survival. And survival is the name of the game here. It's about being ahead of the game. In terms of that triage that exists, when we have the Vic Emergency app on our mobile phones or on our computers through the CFA site, there is a series of color-coded warnings that come through to as part of our warning system. And they consist of 3 pivotal warnings, and I'll just go through them clearly with you so we can understand exactly what they mean and the context. First and foremost, advice. And advice by its general nature is purely advice. There's something happening, it's local, it's in your area, be aware, monitor conditions. And it's just more of a notification of activity than anything else. It can also indicate that the area is now, it can exist as a notification to let you know that there has been activity in the area, but it's no longer a danger to you. Okay, advice, that's fine. Look out for it, remember the color. Next in this triage process is the watch and act warning. Again, received on your mobile phone or on your computer. The watch and act is just that. Watch and act appropriately. An emergency is developing in your area, in your locality. You need to take action now to protect yourself and others. This could be your trigger to leave. The action could be, I'm leaving. I don't want to be in harm's way. I know how dangerous fires can be. I can always come back if the wind direction changes and we're not impacted by the fire. I've got my emergency bag. My family are with me. We're safe. The next element of this warning system is the emergency warning. And by its very nature and that red danger color, you're in imminent danger. You are going to be impacted. You need to do something. You need to take action immediately. Whether or not you've left it too late, I don't know. And again, we don't want to be at that emergency warning stage and be surrounded by an imminent fire. We want to be out of harm's way. We don't want to wait for a warning. We need to be gone well before the warnings arrive. Two further stages that actually exist as well is what we call the evacuation warning and also the community information. The evacuation is recommended or procedures that are in place to evacuate, okay? So that warning will appear to say, look, evacuation procedures or processes are in place, this is what you need to do. A community information warning of information normally arrives after the fire has passed and provides updates for the community. An incident has occurred, but there's no longer a threat to the community. Now, I'm going to now contextualize everything that we've spoken about so far, bring it all together such that you get a better feel for how this would work in a real life situation. So here we are, and I've attached a timeline to this as well to give you a clear indicator of how the process will actually work. So you're sitting at home in your house and everything's good. You find, well, a fire starts some 15, 18, maybe 19 minutes away from you, okay? And this fire is then progresses and is reported some maybe 5 or 10 minutes later, 5 minutes later on 000. And this is when your local brigade is activated or notified, allowing time for the brigade to get to the station, to man the tanker and be out on their travels might take a bit longer. At this point, the fire had progressed closer to your home. It's grown in intensity inside and maybe grown in speed as well. Knowing the topography of Coleraine, there's a high chance that it would have grown faster and be quite intense because of that fuel load. And now it's 10 minutes into the fire and about, say, 9 or 10 minutes away from your home. And look when the advice message is released. The advice message is released is some maybe 12 minutes after the fire has actually started. It's actually quite close to your home. In actual fact, the fire will impact your home, and in 20 minutes or so, it will be after your home has been impacted that you'll get an updated emergency warning. The fire will continue to grow and progress, and some 30 minutes later, will have passed your home and be on to the next home or next location. I'm quite speechless at this stage because, you know, you might be ahead of the warnings, but the fact of the matter is, don't wait for the warnings. People further down the track after the 30 minutes will have had a lot more warning of the fire. The fact that the advice message jumps straight to an emergency warning without the watch and act is particularly relevant here because the people in this home did not have enough time to react to the time of the impacting of the fire. Let's just contextualize this a bit more. And a perfect segue to this is that we're quite intuitive creatures and creatures of habit, particularly those of us that live on the land and have always been on the land. We can understand and have an intuitive sense when things aren't quite right, when the sky is a different color, or there's a smell in the air, or we see something that we're not comfortable with, we know that something's not right. And generally is the case that if we sense that something's not right, there's a good chance that it is not right. Use your senses, use the vision to see what's going on around you. Don't draw the blinds and turn the air conditioning on. Look outside your window, monitor your Vic Emergency app, see what's going on. See the color of the sky, look at the sky. Look on the horizon for smoke or smoke plumes. Listen. Sometimes you can listen and see. You can listen out for fire activity. You can see embers as they float over you or come close to your home. Or ash. Ash is another clear indicator. And of course, smell. Smell the fire. Understand exactly what is happening in your neighborhood. What I'm going to do now, and this is quite important, is bring some of those components together and let you know that, okay, up until this stage, we've had an understanding of fire behaviour. We've spoken about the warning and communication system. We've spoken about the need to not wait for that warning and to leave early. So the writing is quite clearly on the wall, isn't it? We know that we're in a dangerous part of the world. We know that fire is a clear and present danger. What we need to do is take ownership of that situation, that understanding, and make plans to be out of harm's way. So planning and decision making, this is pretty critical, you know. As an ex-Cub Scout of many years gone by now, actually, one of the things that was always drilled into us was preparation, and preparation is the key. Know when to make the decision to leave. I'm going to take a bit of time and spend a bit of time talking to you about a hypothetical situation. And this hypothetical is the closest that we could get to reality to bring all the elements that we've spoken about, you know, your understanding of what extreme means, your understanding of radiant heat and ember attack, the emergency app. Let's put it all together now and see how we're going to respond in this hypothetical situation. So here we go. It's 8 a.m. on a Wednesday morning, okay? When you look outside, you can see it's already hot and very windy. The morning news is reporting that today is a day of extreme fire danger rating. So going back to our FDR, we know what extreme means, okay? Look, you've got stuff to do, so you jump into your car and you shoot off to work, which is about 10 kilometers down the road. And you can see small branches falling around you from trees, and you feel the heat coming through your windows of your glass of the car, the radiant heat that we spoke about before. It's about lunchtime, and you overhear people talking about a fire that started near to your home. You know what to do, because we know that Vic Emergency app is a great tool to use. So you jump onto the Vic Emergency app to find out, well, whereabouts exactly, and you see that it has started a short distance from your home. So what do? You jump in your car and you start heading home to make sure that everything is okay at home. And as you get closer, you'll see that the road is blocked by police. You wind down the window in your car and they advise you that, hey, it's not safe to go into the area because, look, there's a fire and trees are falling down and coming across the road. It's not safe for you to go there. Now you have to make or find somewhere else to go until the road is reopened. What I'd like to do now on the back of that, oopsie daisy, what I'd like to do on the back of that is open a poll that asks you, well, exactly what does this mean for you? What does it mean for you that you are in a situation that you're not prepared for? So the first question, and I'll just open that poll for you. Second. Okay, here we go. So, where would you be on an average Wednesday in summer? Would you be at home? Would you perhaps be on holiday, or would you be at work? If you cast your minds back to last summer, would you be prepared to spend maybe a few days or a few nights away from home in an emergency situation like this when the police told you couldn't get back to your home? And thirdly, and quite pivotally, did you have an emergency kit packed with some clothes, important documents, photos, or medicines? Did you have your emergency bag with you at the time of leaving home? I'll just give you a couple of seconds to respond to that. Great. Okay, I'm going to end the polling, share the results. Ah, super. Okay. So most of you would actually have been at home. 50-50 split. Some people would have somewhere to stay, some people wouldn't. But interestingly, the majority of people did not have an emergency kit ready. That's very interesting. So I'm hoping that this module has helped you to realize the importance of having that kit. More importantly, realizing your course of action on an extreme day. And we'll come back to that in just 2 seconds. I'm going to stop sharing those results and end that poll. Fantastic. What I'm going to do now is that now that we know about that situation, I'm just going to modify the situation slightly and talk to you about the same scenario, same day, slightly changed towards the end, okay? Now, the fire is still away. So basically, the same day, except this time when you jump on the Vic Emergency app, yeah, you see that the fire is still some way away from your property. You know that little yellow triangle that we spoke about? Yep. It doesn't quite reach your home. So you reckon to yourself, well, okay, I think I've got enough time to get home and grab some important stuff. So you drive home, and as you get out of the car on your driveway, you notice embers falling around you. You jump back onto the app and you check on the advice message, and still the fire is quite some way away. You frantically move around the house, grabbing stuff as you can remember it, quite haphazardly, quite disorientatedly, and try and get them back to the car. But each time you go back to the car, you keep checking on the app, and still, the triangle is still far away, and you're not being told to evacuate. So you still think, oh, there's nothing, I'm okay here. You still have time to leave, right? Okay. You still have time to get all your bits ready. So you're running through a list in your mind, and this is the cognitive function that I speak to about. Your ability to think clearly and think straight is severely impacted. The passport, the birth certificates, the medications, the dog cage, the cat cage, the dog food, the water, the blanket, the emergency bag, all of these things go through your mind, and you realize to yourself that this is taking far longer than you thought it would. Then you notice every time you go out to the car with another bundle, small patches of smoke coming up from the garden bed and from that pile of leaves that you were remembering to rake up a couple of days previously, and you never got round to it. Embers have started falling near your home. You feel that surge of adrenaline pump through your body, and this is the time that reality strikes. You're out of time. You are out of time. So with that in mind, what is the one thing that you could have done differently? And put your response in the chat function, because here you are, you're in a very critical, very vulnerable situation in this hypothetical as well. We've just made this scenario, but not too dissimilar to what could happen, but it's a hypothetical. And can you sense the amount of pressure this is causing you? The amount of thinking time that you're having to do? And that's without thinking about the neighbors that are vulnerable, Auntie Flo next door. It's without thinking about the children who might be at school or at some sporting activity or cared for by somebody else. It's without thinking about whether the road is blocked, and when you get to the end of the road, which way do you go, left or right? Or are you going to grab that hose pipe and start putting out those sort of ember burns? Can you understand the dynamic of the many layers that I'm trying to add to this element of being prepared when it comes to fire safety? Fire safety essentials is about getting you out of your comfort zone and thinking about the basics to stay safe. This is one of my closing slides now as we come almost towards the end of this presentation. And that's the idea that you can download the Vic Emergency app, and that's one learning that you should do. We are prepared to offer you a bushfire planning workshop in your locality. And again, the resource information is available at the end of this presentation. And it's all about planning and thinking ahead, that dreaded P word, preparedness, preparation. I'd like to make just a quick reference to COVID-19. And I think we are still in the grips of a pandemic that's affecting everything that we do in our lives. So when we talk about COVID-19, and when it comes particularly to fire and fire danger, the CFA advocate and are happy for you to leave a high-risk fire area on a day of high fire danger. If you are in social or self-isolation, make sure that you self-isolate at your new place and your new accommodation, and make sure those around you are aware of your self-isolation, and make sure that you maintain full COVID planning. You may travel for the purpose of preparing your property for the fire season, and that's perfectly acceptable in our current COVID circumstances. We've spoken about planning and being prepared, but we also have to acknowledge that even the best laid plans can fail. So plan B, C, and D are always going to be viable options. So what are your survival options if a plan fails? As was demonstrated by one of our earlier animations around radiant heat, covering up is the order of the day. Cover up as much as you possibly can. Any bare elements of skin will blister, will burn in the event of radiant heat. We spoke a lot about the use of an emergency bag. Some of these items of clothing could be components of your emergency bag. So if you are caught out, if you are trapped in any circumstance, you have a layer of clothing that can be placed, can be worn, but preferably natural fiber clothing, and certainly sturdy boots and tough leather gloves are the go. This is not rocket science, folks. This is about staying safe, and it's about protecting your body, your skin from the dangers of radiant heat, which, as we've demonstrated in the early part of this presentation, are highly penetrating. Radiant heat also is invisible, as we know, and it travels laterally in straight lines from the source of the fire, ahead of the fire front. The only means of protection is to shelter behind or inside solid objects. Hiding behind buildings or water tanks, concrete water tanks is one option. Remember also that radiant heat does pass through glass. So remember not to be on the other side of glass, which could potentially fracture. We speak a lot, particularly as when we're talking about seeking refuge, if you ever do get caught out in a fire situation, to seek refuge in somewhere like a river, a watercourse like a river, a dam, or perhaps a swimming pool, or even, although not highly recommended, anywhere where there is a potential for ignition would certainly not be a place to go. But yes, dams, rivers, and swimming pool. One thing I do want to pay particular reference to, and that is the idea of seeking refuge in a stationary vehicle, a car. The CFA do not advocate for seeking refuge in a stationary vehicle. Cars are designed to go from A to B, to take you from A to B. They are not designed to be a place of refuge in the event of a fire. But we understand that in some cases, it's the only option. So if you have that unfortunate circumstance where you have to seek refuge in a vehicle or a stationary car, first of all, make sure that the car is parked on burnt ground, away from fire and fire activity as possible. Make sure that the car lights are on. Make sure that the car engine block is facing the fire front. This will give you a bit of added protection. In terms of your own personal maneuvering, position yourself in the car below the level of the windows. Make sure you cover yourself with a dry blanket. It can't be wet because this will actually cause you to have steam or hot burns as a result of being heated up by the radiant heat and the heat intensity. So a dry blanket. Make sure that you also have a bottle of water with you underneath that blanket. It's not going to be pleasant, and we would certainly not recommend it. It would be a last resort. When we talk about neighbourhood safer places, there are designated bushfire neighbourhood safer places, as denoted by this slide on the top left-hand corner of of a green sign with the people image on. I have to say that bushfire places of last resort are just that. They are a last resort. They won't guarantee safety, and they won't be a comfortable experience. But they do offer a chance of survival some distance away from you and that radiant heat. The identified bushfire place of last resort within the Coleraine region is actually within 5 kilometres of Coleraine. It's actually on the Coleraine Railway Reserve. The other nearest bushfire place of last resort is in the High Street Service Road in Merino, which is about 19 kilometres away. So you've got 2 options. Your nearest one is in Coleraine at the Railway Reserve, less than 5 k's away. And secondly, a bit further away, 19 k's, is the High Street Service Road in Merino. But we don't particularly want to be in that situation of seeking refuge in a bushfire place of last resort. We, as I'm sure that this presentation will demonstrate, we will have a plan that we stick to, and that we act early and away from the danger that is fire very early in the piece. I show these images of fire as a closing slide, just to remind us all of the very aggressive, unpredictable, and different nature of fires across our state. Take-home messages are quite clear. You need to have a survival plan. The fire plan that I spoke to you is available as a resource, as I say, that will be available at the end of this presentation. Property preparation, we've not spoken about it during this presentation, but certainly the Property Advice Visit Service, the PAV service, is available to allow our homeowners to prepare their properties appropriately and to be fire ready. Limit that continuity of fuel between you and the fire front. Have clean spouting. Remove those wood piles from near the house. Have your gas bottles, valves facing away from your home. And again, all this reference material is available in our resources. As indicated previously, we are able to organise a bushfire planning workshop for your locality, and we're happy to do that. So David, maybe you and I can have a chat at the end to be able to organise that. I can't stress how important it is to actually download the Vic Emergency app. And lastly on the list there is to connect with David Ducher, your local CFA captain at the Coleraine Brigade. David, whom I've spoken to a number of times, is passionate about community safety and community health and management. He's available on the mobile number given there. Please feel free to give him a call to discuss your fire plan, and also the resourceful, I suppose, the capacity of the local brigade to assist during this difficult fire period. Before I go, I'd just like to share our final poll. And this final poll consists of 2 questions that will ask you, did you find that this meeting gave you a better understanding of bushfire risk in your area? And secondly, would you recommend this program to family, friends, or neighbours that live in a fire-prone area? I might just give you a couple of seconds. You've been a fantastic audience, just to pop a couple of responses in there. I'll just launch that polling. That's fantastic. Superb. Thank you very much. I'll just end that polling there and close the poll. Beautiful. Okay, look, we do acknowledge that some elements of this presentation may have been a bit graphic and maybe a bit distressful for some of you. If you feel that you've been impacted in any way by the content, there are a couple of helpline numbers there that we can provide access to so that you can seek support should you need to. My name is Raj and I'm a community educator with the CFA. It's been a pleasure delivering this presentation to you today. I can be contacted through David, your CFA captain, if you have any further questions or want confirmation or clarification around anything. I'm more than happy to help. Please feel free to touch base with me if you require. I'll sign off now. Thank you very much. Stay safe, have that plan, and look out for each other. Thank you.